environments, and as they pollute those environments. Particles, that's a dust mite, 32,000 of them on an ounce of dust. And there are a lot of people who are allergic to dust mites because dust mites love to eat organic material, dead skin. And when they eat that dead skin, they do what other animals do, and that becomes aerosolated. And that dust mite feces has enzymes in it that makes people allergic to it. And so dust mites obviously are a problem, and what they do after they eat becomes a problem. But there are other things in the environment floating around as well, pollen and mold spores, particulates that need to be taken out of the air that we breathe. There have been multiple studies about submicron particles and how they actually get past our natural filtering systems, the nose hairs, the hairs in our lungs, and actually can even be brought into our bloodstream. And so dealing with particles, of course, is an extremely important way of dealing with indoor air quality. Unfortunately, in the indoor air quality business for the last few years, so much emphasis and focus has been put on particles that some of the other problems that are in the environment have been ignored. And so a lot of effort has been made to make really good and efficient filters. But that's only one solution to one specific problem. Odors. In our environment, we have odors, all kinds of odors. Sometimes those odors are symptomatic of gases. Sometimes they're symptomatic of other things like cooking odors or secondhand smoke. But odors are a tremendous allergen, and it's an indoor air quality issue that needs to be addressed. Gases. Of course, I tell people in our indoor air quality classes that we have enough chemicals under our kitchen sink to kill a couple of elephants. But the truth is that we have all kinds of things in our environments that are off-gassing different types of chemicals. You think about walking into a room that's just been painted. That room smells. There's your odors. But those odors are actually coming from gases from the paints and the VOCs. Those gases will continue for years and years, sometimes up to 10 years, after the smell of the new paint has gone away. Formaldehyde, glues, OSB, carpeting, all of these things put off gases. Some of them we smell, some of them we don't smell. Usually at this point when I'm talking about indoor air quality, I talk about these three as they're really evidenced by secondhand smoke. A single cigarette produces over 4,000 chemical gases, 43 of which are carcinogenic. And in most cases, when they try to take cigarette smoke out of an environment, like in a bar or a restaurant, they use a filter, and so they're successful at taking the particles out, but it still smells like an ashtray, and that's because they haven't removed the gases and the odors that remain. So if you were going to have a multi-strategic solution to secondhand smoke, you'd have to have something that would deal with not only the particulates, but also deal with the gases and with the odors. And then of course we have biopollutants, and we think about mold because it's something that's very obvious and there's been a lot of press about it, but there's all kinds of biopollutants in our environments. E. coli, salmonella, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, all kinds of things going on in our environments that actually become aerosolated. Now that's not because the bacteria has wings and can fly around, but it does in fact travel on the dead skin cells and other things that are floating around in our environment. When I talked about particulates, one of the things that I didn't really mention but is one of the biggest pollutions in our environment is our cells. We actually put off dead skin cells, and if you look at a shaft of light in the morning and you see all of those things floating around, 80% of that, according to scientists, 80% of that is dead skin. Well, that dead skin becomes a little magic carpet ride for bacteria and for viruses and other types of biopollutants. And so biopollutants are a major issue not only on surfaces but also when they become aerosolated. That's the fourth component of indoor air quality that needs to be addressed. Temperature and humidity. Obviously, as the temperature gets high and the humidity gets high, much greater chance of mold growing. Even when the temperature gets low and the humidity gets low, there's a good possibility that bacteria will grow. And so one of the things that we do in our trainings is we talk about trying to keep the relative humidity between 40 and 60% so that there's a less possibility that contaminants will actually grow in that environment. But these two components obviously need to be addressed. In the air conditioning industry, they talk about combining these two, and they deal with what's called psychrometrics and how the two actually work in environments to keep air cleaner and how they can make the air conditioning systems more efficient. Temperature and humidity. And then the seventh component is comfort, and that's how air moves in the environment. You know, when you're in an environment that's got stagnant air, where it's hot at your head and it's cold at your feet, it's extremely uncomfortable. By getting the air moving, by using ceiling fans, leaving the air conditioning system on, so that it's actually moving the air, not only are you keeping a more comfortable environment, you're taking away the false positives that a thermostat might give you, false readings that you might have about the heat or the coolness of that particular environment. And if you're using proactive air purification technologies or passive technologies, as we're going to talk about in just a few moments, moving the air is vital to keeping good air quality. By moving the air, you're trapping the particulates, you're taking the proactive air purification to the surfaces, cleaning the bacteria, killing the mold, you're dealing with odors and VOCs. All of that has to do with air movement. So these 7 components, and again, we're talking about particulates, odors, gases, temperature, humidity, and comfort. All of these have to be addressed if you're going to have a multi-strategic solution to this multifaceted problem. Particles, biopollutants, odors, temperature, humidity, gases, and comfort. You need to address all of them. So the first conclusion that should be drawn after understanding the many facets of the problem is that solution is not just about filters. Filters play a very big part in resolving many issues, but they certainly don't address many of the pollutants like odors and gases, and they are restricted by the difficulty of trying to get some of these pollutants to the filter. We'll talk about the value of good filters and the shortcomings of bad ones shortly, but even before that discussion, it's clear that it's not the whole answer to IAQ management. It's not about source removal. If we are producing much of the dead skin that's in any environment, removing us is not the answer. Yes, we can give our cat to Aunt Sally and tell our wife to smoke outdoors, but there are so many things in our environments that simply cannot be removed. After all, who wants to live in a stainless steel house? So many of our construction materials are great feeding ground for mold and bacteria, and how do we fix that problem? And it's not about dilution. Certainly adding fresh air into the home or office is a good way to dilute some of the contaminants, but as I suggested earlier, in some parts of the country, the last thing I want to do is bring so-called fresh air into the environment. At least I wouldn't want to bring it in without it having been cooled, filtered, and purified. Again, certainly a part of the solution, but not the entire solution. Our solution, the NORMI-approved solution, is a multi-strategic approach with these 3 prongs: air filtration and purification, surface protection, and lifestyle changes. When I wrote my book, Mold-Free Construction, and that's available at moldfreeconstruction.com, I suggested a sanitization protocol, and it incorporates this 3-pronged approach. Take a look here at a recent table that I found that suggested the top 10 solutions to indoor air quality issues. It's interesting because the 3-pronged approach is included right here. You've got utilize air purification, utilize air filtration, dehumidify or humidify, reduce carpeting, revise your cleaning schedule, use hypoallergenic bedding, use green cleaning supplies, reduce volatile organic compounds, respond quickly to leaks or moisture, manage plants, and clean your pets. It's interesting that this three-pronged approach is included. Lifestyle changes that include decluttering, scheduled maintenance, and so forth is incorporated in the revised cleaning schedule. Respond quickly to leaks and use hypoallergenic bedding. Using green cleaning supplies that are low in VOCs deals with surface protection, and I have many more listed in my sanitization protocol. So we want to now close in on air filtration and purification technologies, which is probably the most technical of all the solutions. There are so many air purification technologies and so much marketing hype that it's often difficult to understand exactly what works and what doesn't. So let's simplify the approach. Every piece of air purification equipment in the market today is either active or passive in its approach to resolving indoor air pollution problems. By passive, we mean that, like a mousetrap, it's bringing the pollution to the solution. A filter is a good example of a passive technology because the filter sits there waiting for the air to be brought to the filter. The other option to take care of that pesky mouse would be to buy a cat. That cat is on seek and destroy mode, and she's going out there to take the solution to the pollution. That's a proactive approach to solving the problem. So in that context, let's talk about the different technologies in the marketplace and talk about each, how they work, and the advantages or disadvantages of each. What you'll quickly see is that a synergistic approach utilizing multiple technologies in a combination of passive and active is by far the best and most effective way to deal with all of the potential contaminants in the indoor environment. To take this a step further in evaluating technologies on the market today, all of them, that is all of the equipment on the market today, utilizes one of 5 technologies: either filtration, ionization, ozonation, ultraviolet, or ultraviolet with target plate. The very best equipment utilizes several of these, as you'll see in a few moments, but we must first understand the value and limitation of each before we have a clear understanding of the efficiency and effectiveness when these are combined. Filters would include all of the different media that we see in the market. They might be fiberglass, foam rubber, carbon or carbon impregnated, polyester, but each serves a different purpose based on its density and configuration. HEPA, high efficiency particulate arrestor, filters, probably the highest quality filter on the market today, incorporated a pleated configuration and is usually appropriate only in commercial environments where the air handlers can handle the tight density of the filter media. For the average consumer, anything above a MERV 7 or 8 rating, according to ASHRAE. Now, ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, could negatively impact the efficiency of the air conditioning system and even, in many cases, damage blower motors and other moving parts of the system. MERV, which is the Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value, a standard set by ASHRAE to determine the effectiveness and efficiency of a specific media. Ionization sends an electrical charge into the environment using several different types of components to charge particles and make them flock together or aggregate so they can be carried to the filter. In many cases, submicron particles are so light that they are never brought to the filter, and these are, by most studies, the most harmful to our health. Bypassing the natural filters of our nose and lungs, these particles can wreak havoc on our health. Ozonation is produced by a couple of different methods. Ozone can be very effective in reducing microbial pollutants in the air and on surfaces, but it must be closely monitored and is problematic for a small percentage of the population. Ozone production is regulated by some states, and in particular, the state of California bans air purification technologies that incorporate ozone production in their machines. Fortunately, there are now other technologies that are just as effective without the harmful side effects. Ultraviolet has been widely used in the air conditioning industry, but unfortunately it seems as though many technicians really don't understand how it works, or doesn't, and so many have lost faith in the effectiveness as an air purification technique. With the advent of target plates, the photocatalytic oxidation technology is one of the newest technologies addressing airflow, and has proven to be extremely effective in keeping air and surfaces clean of many contaminants. Let's talk about each of these in a little more detail and discuss whether they are active or passive in their approach to air purification. This is a good example of a traditional pleated filter. There are some limitations that inhibit the effectiveness of filters, and much of that has to do with the type of filter that's used and the maintenance, or lack of it, that's required. We've talked about the variety of filter media that can be used, but all filters are limited by the air handler itself in terms of the amount of air that actually gets to the filter. Air exchanges are a way of describing the effectiveness of the filter, but it ignores the reality that much of the air in any environment never actually gets to the filter. Just like the swirling leaf in a swimming pool that never gets to the pool filter, the air in any environment has pockets of air that never move. At least that air never gets exchanged and therefore is never really filtered. Maintenance is probably one of the biggest issues with filters because people often will leave their filters in for a very long time. So long that the media is so full that it actually sucks the cardboard frame of the filter away from the edges of the return, causing blow-by. And again, the air is not filtered. If filters are not changed regularly, they can become a media for mold and bacterial growth, a syndrome that we in the industry call bionesting. The solution is a good MERV 7 or 8 filter, frameless, impregnated with a good antimicrobial. And if you view Best Living Systems module at the end of this module, also attached to this lesson, you'll see the value and efficiency of the perfect fit filter for most 1-inch applications. With all this understood, the filter is still passive, waiting for the contaminants to get to it. We highly recommend a good filter, but it should be only one of the parts of the solution, and it should be one that doesn't cause the very problems that you're trying to solve. Ions are invisible particles, either molecules or atoms, which bear an electric charge. Atoms, for instance, consist of an atomic nucleus that contains neutral neutrons and positively charged protons, as well as orbiting electrons that are negatively charged. And when an atom is in neutral condition, the number of protons and electrons, which are negative, protons positive, electrons negative, is equal. When the number of protons and electrons is not the same, the particle becomes an ion that is either positively or negatively charged. Negative ions can be artificially generated by electrical devices such as ionizers, which use an external power source to generate large quantities of negative ions. Virtually all particles in the air have a positive charge, while negative ions have a negative charge, in which case negative ions and particles magnetically attract to one another. When there's a high enough concentration of negative ions in the air, they will attract to floating particles in large numbers. This causes the particle to become too heavy to remain airborne, and as a result, the particle will fall out of the air and will then be collected by normal cleaning activities such as vacuuming or dusting or even in the filter. The ionization process has been used for years on the construction sites and other locations where particulates need to be removed from our breathing space. Negative needlepoint and pulsating ionization simply charge those particles that are then attracted to one another and either dropped out of our breathing range or taken to a filter. The newest ionization technology is the dielectric barrier ionizer. This component actually creates what some call a bipolar ion or clustered ion, where both positive and negative ions are combined in the same charge. This sounds counterintuitive, but testing has shown that this actually happens, and that the clustered ion, though safe for humans, is lethal to microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, and mold or fungus. This is a completely natural process, utilizes low voltage, so it's an energy-saving process, and effective on a variety of IAQ contaminants. When combined with other components, this technology produces a powerful oxidation process, and Best Living Systems trademarked it as multi-cluster ionization, MCI. It's just a better way to address many of the contaminants in the indoor environment because it produces very low levels of ozone, nearly immeasurable and safe. Best part of all, this technology is proactive. It sends the solution downstream to the pollution and will therefore help keep air and surfaces clean, even quite a distance from the equipment. There has been much concern about ozone, and I just have to say that much of it is inaccurate. Though there is no need now with the newer technologies to incorporate ozone in the air purification technologies, the production of ozone is as natural as lightning and actually causes the clean, crisp smell that we get after a thunderstorm or at the beach or in the mountains. Called nature's cleaning product, ozone can be a very powerful oxidizer, and when used correctly can be very effective. Though highly efficient for smoke cleanup and fire restoration projects, more IAQ professionals steer customers away from the use of ozone, even at low levels, due to the sensitivity of young children, the elderly, and immunosuppressed people. I'm thankful that there are technologies that have advanced beyond our need for a discussion about the value or limitation of this specifically proactive technology. This brings us to ultraviolet lamps, the darling of the HVAC industry. It's long been known that UV light at the germicidal wavelength, 254 nanometer, is extremely effective against microbials. The food processing industry, the post office, and other applications have been fully convinced of its effectiveness and utilized it for really tough organisms like E. coli, anthrax, to name a few. Unfortunately, in the air conditioning system, the limitations of the technology enable it to be very effective in cleaning the surfaces on the inside of the air handler, but not very effective in sending any of that cleansing power downstream into the airflow. Why? Well, the UV technology has two major limitations: time and proximity. How long is the microorganism exposed to the light, and how close is it to the light? In most cases, air conditioning contractors have found that due to the high rate of speed with the air racing past the UV light, that the bugs hardly get a sunburn. Ultraviolet light is great for the surfaces inside the system, but not very effective in the airstream. It really is a passive technology, waiting for the bugs to come close to it so it can zap them, change their DNA, or neutralize them. Over the past few years, scientists and engineers have learned the power of a combination of UV, the germicidal wavelength UV, and a target plate. This UV becomes a catalyst for producing a much more powerful oxidizer than actually does get into the airstream, clean the air and surfaces downstream from the air handler. When combining these two, the UV and the target plate can then be coated with multiple coatings of different metals, its shape altered to expose more of the surface to the UV, and in turn produce a powerful clustered ion similar to the dielectric barrier ionizer we discussed earlier. This proactive technology is becoming the choice for all air purification technologies, and when combined with other components, as we'll discuss in a moment, air purification technology has now taken a turn toward becoming the foundation for creating clean, healthy environments indoors. No longer is this technology an option, but a must for anyone who's interested in addressing all the pollutants now found in indoor environments. This concludes our training on IAQ technologies. IAQ Basics 101. Remember that the combination of many components into a single product is the very best way to address all of the contaminants in any environment. You've got a multifaceted problem, you need a multi-strategic solution. If you have a greater interest in the products that have been developed around the clustered ion, multi-cluster ionization trademark, we have provided a module on your page entitled BLS Products to help you better understand the options you may have for your own use or may want to offer to your clients. The trademarked MCI multi-cluster ionization technology are incorporated in all of these products, from HVAC probes to standalones. They're affordable, effective, and efficacious for air and surfaces in virtually any environment. Safe for humans, but lethal to microbes. Thank you for taking the time to get better educated on the basics of IAQ. We offer more advanced trainings in the IAQ field, which includes specific trainings on mold, formaldehyde, as well as more trainings in the indoor air quality field itself. And we look forward to providing more information in the classes ahead.
I want to welcome today's guest, Sarah Mack from Entropy Labs. So many of you know the lab. It used to be known as Prism Labs, and now it's Entropy, and she's the Director of Business Development. So Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Lance. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. You know, we talk about indoor air quality in almost all of our classes. Everything we do is really solution-based based on indoor air quality. And one of the main components of that has to do with VOCs. And that's where we look to you people for help. I know in the past I've done some VOC testing where from other labs and other resources, I've gotten reports back that I keep looking for my chemistry degree, and I can't seem to find it. You know,
Some of them.
to understand some of these labs, where I've actually had to tell people, especially in large commercial facilities, here's your report. Please take it to the people that work for you, and you figure out if it belongs here. You know, it's just too complicated. So one of the reasons that we talk about you guys is just the ease of how your laboratory produces the material that we're able to read and understand, and the customer understands it too. So we're going to get to all of that, but I want to know right now the name change, because everybody that calls me still talks about, can I have the number for Prism Labs and stuff? I know you've changed it. What's the story?
Sure, certainly. So yeah, a few years back in 2017, we actually were acquired by a company called Montrose Environmental Group. Underneath the Montrose Environmental Group parent company, they have a vertical, which is considered the Enthalpy Lab network. And so from that, again, back in 2017, we had that ownership change, actually just starting in 2022, the beginning of 2022, they made us do that name change. So Enthalpy Analytical is what we're now called. If you call us Prism, we're not offended.
Well, that's a good thing, because it just kind of seems what everybody's been doing for years. I know I've been working with you guys for a very long time, and name changes are always difficult. So matter of fact, if you didn't know, we changed our name too. NORMI was the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. We've kept NORMI, but the new name is actually the National Organization of Remediators and Microbial Inspectors.
Gotcha.
Much wider umbrella, which is really why indoor air quality and the VOC component go together so well. So if we're looking at VOCs and avoiding all the other types of sampling that our members do and the public, kind of expects, what type of VOCs are really what you guys can handle for us?
Sure. So VOCs is a very, very wide range of chemical compounds. And typically, what that indicates is that it's actually at a gaseous state at normal operating temperatures. There are some that are considered very volatile. There are some that are considered semi volatile. And so sometimes those can get confused. Our ranges are typically in the volatile organic compounds. So, again, that normal operating temperature of an indoor space, and they're going to be at a gaseous state. Those include a number of different kinds of products, cleaning supplies, the chemical compounds that are associated with fuel, gasoline, heating, cooling. Refrigerants are on the very volatile end, but there are a number of them we can see as well.
Well, I know that when we do our testing, we often look for on the clearance side or the post-remediation verification, VOCs that are associated with the chemistries that are used during the process. We really try to avoid, a remediation process that causes more problems for the occupants than the actual mold or microbial issues that were there. So that's where your stuff comes in. But there's also a component of what you test for MVOCs, which is different than VOCs, right?
In a way, yes, they are slightly different. So VOCs, or mold VOCs, are considered a volatile organic. The mold portion of it is strictly an indication as to its relationship with mold. Now, we have about 21 target VOCs that we use for our mold VOC total. Those chemicals have been found in literature pieces and publications in the past. They're ones that we can see with our equipment, and they're ones that could be indicative of an odor that might be present. The mold VOCs are slightly different, of course, than the spores and some of the other things you might test for with mold, but they're only emitted as mold is actively growing. And so those are what we look for, again, those 21 markers. There is some crossover with other products in the home that might have some mold VOC chemicals, because again, they're standard VOCs. It's just which one are those active growing molds actually producing. So there is some crossover, say, with paint. So if there was a lot of recent painting, we might have an elevation in what we would show as an elevated mold VOC, but then we start going through that series of questions. That is the difficulties. We're not looking at the actual particulate itself, but we're assuming based on the chemistry, what we're seeing, what is actually present.
Because I've done some assessments myself where I've been in environments that are immaculate, how clean they are. But when you're dealing with the occupants, you can see that they're suffering from something. And I've been surprised a few times where the MVOCs are almost off the scale, almost 4,000, which is extremely high on your scale rating for MVOCs, especially when I'm not finding anything, spore-wise. The spore traps are coming back clean. There's very little growth, if anything, but the VOC levels are really elevated.
Yeah, so our scale for the mold VOC, I think you got a little bit crisscross there with the TVOCs, but typically starting at 8 nanogram per liter is what would be an outdoor average for mold VOCs. Anything up and above that 8 is where we would start to look to see any active mold presence in that space. Now that could be super small, like just an excess of overwatered plants, or it could be something a bit bigger where we do have something that's hidden behind the wall. Now, spores are much larger in terms of size, so those don't make it through the wall necessarily as quickly as what those volatile organics would. But then too, again, we have to take that with a grain of salt in looking at the chemistry, because if the compounds are associated primarily with paint, or we do know that there was some recent construction that had happened there, it may be that it is related to something different than a specific mold growth. So they aren't a catch-all, and they're definitely not the one-stop shop in terms of mold detection. So they're a complement.
So if I said that I was just testing you to see if you were paying attention with reversing those scales, you probably wouldn't believe me. Actually, what happened was I was looking at some reports from earlier today, and I had one that the regular VOCs, the number was gigantic. And, that's what's sticking out in my head. And you are absolutely correct. It is a different scale. But again, still elevated mold VOCs when I'm still not picking up particulates or any other signs of mold, either because of the cleaning they did or just it's a different problem.
Could be. Mhm.
So from your perspective, the indoor air quality arena or space, as we call it, how do you see the VOCs really fitting in from your side of it, not from ours? We understand our side.
Sure. So the way I like to think about the indoor air environment is we know that there are a number of different things that are associated with that. We have the particulates, we have molds, we have the VOC, we have some things as simple as temperature and humidity. But a large majority, when you look at the chemical makeup of the indoor air with the particulate in a general type scan, not just specifically for mold, but just particulates in general and what's present in terms of a dust characterization, I liken that between the VOCs and the dust, you're looking at 80% of what would be present in an indoor air space that could be of concern causing symptoms. And so it is a major component, certainly for the indoor air environment. There are some things that we can kind of test out. I know we've talked a little bit about some of the instant read meters or monitors that can be used, but in terms of VOCs, TVOC is on a lot of those monitors for a reason.
It's interesting the way that you bring that up because we get a lot of questions because we have a monitoring program under Norman Pro Monitoring where we monitor in real time, and VOCs is part of that. However, that is a screening system. We are screening the environment. We're watching what's happening. We're looking for anomalies. We're not identifying what the problem or the VOC is. That's what you guys do.
That is right. There are some limitations, certainly, in some of those instant or real-time read instrumentations that are out there and available. They're certainly helpful for what I call habit identification. So when we see on Wednesday nights, the building always gets cleaned, we see those VOCs go up. That's going to be that habit or that repeating event essentially, and that can happen in indoor environments in terms of homes as well. There's a number of research studies out there that TVOC monitors are increased in terms of the totals, say when you're cooking, when you get home at the end of the night, when you're taking your shower in the morning. So you start to see some habits and forming that gives you some indication of quite possibly correlation on what's happening in the space that might be causing that. But then two, sometimes you don't know, and maybe you just have a total overall high VOC level. That may happen in cases where you have a brand new home, or a significant remodel where you just have a total high VOC and you can't pinpoint specifically to any one activity or even series of activities. That's where the testing through the laboratory is going to be much more helpful. Knowing that you have a high total VOC and then starting to work through and identify what those sources are within it, or what the chemicals are within that are making up that total.
That's exactly how we put this out there in our trainings to our membership, that a lot of the testing is done is really on the screening side. And once you've screened and identified an anomaly or problem, something that's outside the norm, then there's more detailed investigative work that can be done, and you use more sophisticated tools. And that really is their understanding in this industry of how we go about approaching it. So yeah, I'm glad that you did bring that up, and it's important to understand the difference between the screening and testing, which is the language that we use. We've screened, now we need to test. Oh, very good. Specialty type of reports, I think, is something else that you guys are pretty good with. If somebody needs something very specific, you can help them.
Certainly. So our laboratory here in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, we specialize in VOC detection. And so because of that, we've really honed in on a number of different reports and types of reports that we can issue in comparison to some of the other laboratories where you were kind of indicating you get chemical by chemical, difficult reports to read. We've specialized some of ours. So with the total VOC, we do have a summary or survey style report where you get that total VOC, and then it breaks it down into types of products that are used, and then some individual compounds. But outside of our standard just VOC check, I'm wondering about it, we've also developed a number of other tests that are helpful that test for VOCs applicable to maybe tobacco smoke. use. We have some for fire or a partial fire, like a structure fire, smoke damage. So if you had something that started in the kitchen maybe and you've got smells that are happening up in the master bedroom, doing this test would help to identify and justify essentially that we have those chemical compounds present that were from that fire event across the house. Additionally, we have testing available now for spray polyurethane foam. A lot of the requests we've been receiving over the last couple of years as we all become more energy efficient, closing up those homes, is that we're tightening things up and people are actually becoming ill afterwards. So we do have a test that's associated with all VOCs that are present that we can test, and then also actually a bulk piece of the foam. And so we make a comparison to say, is the foam still off-gassing in comparison to the air? Or is it simply you closed up all those ventilation pathways with that new spray polyurethane foam, and now you just have a lot of your own VOCs or your own VOC soup?
Do you do anything as far as some of the new hazards that are out there, like meth labs or any of the other chemistries that are being used on the illegal side?
That is difficult because, again, it is a chemistry process. So methamphetamine across the nation is rampant because they're easily obtainable compounds, chemicals, right, and products to make that. There are a number of VOCs that we can see that are part of a ingredient list, you might say, for illicit drug manufacturing. In terms of the actual drug itself, when it's finished, specifically methamphetamine, it's too heavy to see in the air. So it would be what would be more a semi-volatile or in a particulate, essentially. And so because we do the chemicals in the air versus like a surface dust or a tape lift and things like that to identify illicit drugs, that wouldn't be something we would cover.
Yeah, I guess fentanyl would come under that because that's another one of the hot topics right now.
Yes, yep. And those specifically, there are a number of labs that are out there that are specialized in those for a lot of the cleanup and the remediators that you've got.
How about on the investigative side? We're going a little off topic here, but as far as like fire service for arson investigation, stuff like that, to get more into some of accelerant detection?
It's not something that we've actually been approached for. No, we have attended in the past, and actually this year I will also attend the Restoration Industry Association's annual conference. In the past, we actually attended a public adjuster conference, and they too had a number of peoples there that were doing the forensic part of it. We touched base a little bit, but nothing that's ever come to fruition.
Okay. Well, the other thing I wanted to touch on is you are located up in Michigan, correct?
I am.
And I think you had said that you also have, I guess you call them sister labs, other labs or other types of testing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you touch on some of the other types that are available to you?
Sure. So we are kind of an oddball with our lab group. The majority of the labs within the Enthalpy network are actually soil and water testers. They're going to do large scale remediation, brownfield type stuff, phase 1, phase 2 for new buildings. That's a large part of what they test, but soil and water also for, say, PFAS compounds. Those are some hot topics that are coming around in terms of the residences. Wildfires. I know that a couple of the labs in California have done wildfire studies in terms of the soil remediation that happens as large fires come through and what has to be kind of dug up. We also have testing available with like SUMA canisters, or what traditionally would be a TO15, if that's something that the job requires or specifies, pardon. And then the laboratory down in Houston, Texas does a lot with the oil and gas industry. So they do a lot of actual stack emission type testing. So we're pretty much the only one that does real indoor air within the laboratory network. But there's a lot of other things that are available to us at this point.
And that's what I was curious about. Two different things you mentioned, the lab down in Texas for oil. Mm-hmm. Refabbing or rehabbing gas stations, stuff like that. They're always testing soil for that. Yeah. And lead contamination also. Mm-hmm. You know, especially on the older gas stations where they were using leaded gas. I mean, there's a lot of different issues that people are being affected by. So just curious about knowing the different extent of what you guys can test for. I guess our members should just reach out if they have a question about, hey, can you guys test for this?
I like to be a resource. That's one thing, as Prism, we've always prided ourselves on, is being a consultative laboratory. We're not afraid to answer those questions, even if it doesn't mean that a dollar comes into our work. I mean, don't take advantage of that. But at the same time, I'm absolutely always happy to help try to locate the right resource for some of those tests. I've got a list of essential referral labs, that I can send people to.
So do the right thing because it's the right thing to do is kind of like what you guys do as an anomaly to everybody else.
We try, which I try really hard.
Well, that's appreciated. It really is. Just trying to think if there was anything else specific to your lab that you feel that our people should really know about that we haven't talked about.
Well, I again am in the middle of Michigan. So just a little heads up, last week and again today, we got dumped another 5 inches or so. Just be mindful. I guess that's one thing that I've told pretty much all of our clients is that we are in the north. We are winter. Please know and please be patient with any delivery drivers and prep your clients that some of our fast turnaround times of 2 or 5 days sometimes do get extended a little bit when the delivery drivers can't make it to us.
I know that a few years ago, because you're talking about the weather, it got so cold in Michigan that you had to switch away from glass tubes to plastic tubes because they were actually getting so brittle they break.
The return sample encasement, essentially, yeah, we did switch away from our glass ones. We did some case study testing within the laboratory itself between the glass transport vials and our plastic transport vials that we found. And yes, our breakage has drastically reduced.
All right. Well, I have an oddball question for you now. We are spreading our wings, and we will be dealing with several countries outside the U.S. with other testing and processes and trainings. And is there any issue with shipping these types of samples from overseas to your lab?
The benefit of our thermal desorption tubes is that there is not any required chilled shipping. They're stable for about 30 days after collection. With that, I've got clients all over the world. I've got clients in Australia, UK. I've had testing coming from Singapore before. It just depends on where the location is. Most of the time, obviously, the carriers are going to be about a week out. But again, we still have about a 30-day hold time after that sample is collected. So international is not a worry. And actually, for international shipments, we have now also developed or have available our stainless steel tubes. So glass, again, transit is difficult. So because some of those international shipments can take longer, and it would be detrimental for them to have to sample again, we have our stainless steel tubes so that the tube itself does not become destroyed in transit.
Okay, I did not know about that. That's a new one on me. The next piece to that would be expiration dates on some of this stuff, because I know it's happened to me in the past. I've had numerous tubes, I'll have 1 or 2 that'll go beyond the expiration date. What do you do with those?
Well, one of the biggest things we want to let people know is that the sorbent material inside, it's very expensive. So typically, if you're working with some of the other labs that are out there and available and you have to purchase a thermal desorption tube similar to what we actually produce, they're going to be upwards of $60 each. The sorbent material inside is the bulk of the cost. And so with that sorbent material inside can actually be reused approximately 10 times before it starts to go bad or starts to not regenerate as effectively, I should say. So as the chemicals get onto the little sorbent materials and get cracked or stuck in the little cracks and crevices, we heat that tube up and push those gases back off or those chemicals back off. Again, it can go through about 10 different cycles before we have to switch out that sorbent. But if you have sample tubes that have expired, please send them back. They are reusable. They're green in that way that we want to have them back. We'll double check and make sure that our sorbent is still good. We can clean them again and then resend them to you. Maybe not specifically those ones, but any expired tubes that you have, we can send you fresh tubes for just the cost of shipping.
But it's nothing that our members could do themselves.
For
cleaning the tubes or refreshing the tubes. I don't want anybody trying that if it's
no goodness, no. These are I do apologize. That was misleading, wasn't it? In the laboratory, we have a very specific room that has a number of what we consider tube bakers. And so they have a high ramp time with a constant flow of nitrogen gas through them to push and drive all the chemicals off. And then it goes through a check or a quality control process within the laboratory to make sure that that batch is clean.
Any new surprises coming?
We're working and trying to get some information around PFAS compounds in air. It's a hot topic in the soil and water realm.
Could you
And
just
so-
go into a little more detail what that is exactly?
PFAS, yeah, if you're not familiar with it. So per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, these are the compounds that are associated with stain resistance, water repellency, Teflon pans. They're also in a number of fast food materials packaging, that has almost plastic-like surface so that it doesn't become drenched or oil stained, essentially. And what they have found is that these chemical compounds are in mass quantities pretty much everywhere. At this point, they are actually in the air and in the rainwater as well. But that they do bioaccumulate. That's the largest part of the risk, essentially, is that even little bits of exposures that we get throughout our lives as we drink the water. Again, Michigan was terrible about that. We had the Flint water crisis. Now we have PFAS everywhere with a number of locations. But those chemical compounds will build up in your body and can develop adverse side effects. They do anticipate that it's carcinogenic. The number of compounds are carcinogenic. And then it's also known at this point that there are a number of birth defects that can happen through those exposures and having excess levels within your body.
Well, that's not done as VOC testing. That would be actual collection of soil and then sent to the lab or one of your sister labs.
Right. Right now we're doing it in soil and water. But it is something that the EPA has developed a method for large stacks or people manufacturing PFAS compounds, similar to vapor intrusion. So as you get those gas tanks, right, they leak into the ground, and we have the water table that leaks up the vapor into the soil that comes into the inside of our houses. Similarly, vapor intrusion testing for PFAS is coming down the pike. And so that's kind of what we're developing and working on right now.
Yeah, I know a lot of our members, they also do water testing, drinking water, things like that. So I don't know if that would fall into this category of what your labs would be able to test for.
Yep, we actually have 2 labs that specialize. They have a high performance liquid chromatography, HPLC, that performs PFAS compounds, one of which is DoD certified. The other one is almost DoD certified, so Department of Defense. And then we're certified in a number of states for water and soil. So yeah, if you've got questions on it, or if that's something that you need in your area, I can connect you with the right people.
Very good. Very appreciative. Well, I appreciate you spending some time here with us. I know it's cold up there, and it's like, come on, spring. We really want to get outside and deal with some other issues. I know that you guys have had a lot of snow, and you did mention before about transportation and shipping is impacted, and we see that all over the country. We have people today traveling that weren't able to because their flights were canceled. So yeah, it's unfortunate. So if you are watching this, please take that into account. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Don't fall into that category.
If that's anything COVID taught us, with lack of employees for the carriers too, right? That's something we've all been battling, regardless of weather across the country. It just so happens that this last week we've had another whirlwind of winter.
It's funny, we're doing a lot of work right now with people under the term essential employees.
Mhm.
And depending on who you are and where your perspective is coming from, what is an essential employee? Well, in the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, they're essential employees. But nobody thinks about like the cleaning staff. Well, the hospital stops when the cleaning staff stops. So, it's having to revisit all of these different occupations now, and the importance is not so much by the skill of what they do, but of what happens when they don't do what they do.
All true.
So yeah, just something else that affects, again, shipping, transportation, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Sarah, it's been a pleasure. we're going to have to do this again, and get into a little bit more detail on a few of the other things, but I appreciate you spending the time here today.
I look forward to some more education opportunities. We'll get some topics together.
We're going to have you in on a few more sessions. I'm sure after this we'll have a lot of questions, and you may be visiting again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Lance. Have a great day.
You too. I want to welcome today's guests, Kana and Ramu Sankara from Reusip. We've been working with these guys for quite some time. We've spent a lot of time at some trade shows together, and we'll get into that as we're talking through this. So, guys, want to pop in here and say a quick hello and tell us a little about yourselves?
Hi, I'm Ramu. I'm Kana. We're identical twin brothers and co-founders of Reusip.
Well, could you let us know a little bit about the company? I mean, we hear the name, we think we know what it's about, but give us a little bit more detail for those that don't know who you are.
Okay, so I think what we're best known for is our making the world's first reusable dust barrier zipper and the world's first magnetic entry strip, which is essentially a self-closing dust barrier zipper, also reusable. And it essentially works on a hook and loop system where you're just buying these things, which is essentially loop Velcro strips. This is the only consumable part. And then the other ones are reusable. So it's almost like the Dollar Shave Club of zippers. So I guess that would be the easy way to summarize it.
Well, I'm gonna put you guys on the spot in a little bit. I got a few questions I'd like to really go over with you to kind of set the stage here, but I'm gonna ask you to do some demonstrations if that's all right.
For sure.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I know getting in touch with you guys, I've had some issues because you're always traveling. I know you're at all the trade shows all over the place, and you're always someplace. It's kind of like, where are these guys? So, how does it work out for you at the trade shows? Because I know I've seen you at quite a few of them.
Oh, I mean, it's almost like we need a triplet, because it's like we're always slammed at all these things. It's which is great. I'm not complaining, but we're exhausted after these things because there's always like lines, and we're demoing this thing over and over. And we're very grateful that it's something that's very that people care about. I know it's a small thing like a zipper, but we know on the job site they're interacting with this part of the containment all the time, and we're happy that we can provide some value there.
Well, I know at the experience show and some of the other shows we've been at, you've actually been with us in our booth, and we've set up walls and demonstrated containment with your equipment, which has always been a big draw. Like you said, there's a lot of people there with a lot of interest.
Well, I can say in the very, very beginning, we went to an experience, and we're just, we didn't know what we're doing. You guys saw our product, and actually you're probably one of our first supporters. You took our magnetic strip and put it on your flood booth, and which was awesome of you guys. So we'll always be grateful for that. So thank you. And thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome. And you know what? It was a real good add-on because we were demonstrating containment and all the different ways that you can do that, and you have to access containment, and it was just a natural fit with what you do. Matter of fact, in our CMA and CMR classes, we demonstrate the Reusip systems, I'm going to call it, or products, because you have several different ways of doing stuff, and there's no one size completely fits all. So we show your stuff. We do show a few other types of processes, and then pros and cons. And, having that in there for the students to get their hands on it, touch it, use it, see it, experience it, makes all the difference in the world. So I'm going to thank you for allowing us to use that in our classes, because it does make a big difference.
Well, obviously, we're yeah. Thank you. But in Well, we mentioned what we make, and I think I should say why we made the zipper and what makes it different, because people
Sure.
think, well, there's dozens of other options like it. What we believe is that the entire restoration industry simply adopted what was around, and what was around was, we believe, remodeling and general dust containment zippers. And ours are designed, what we believe is designed for critical barriers, and it was born out of the restoration industry and made more specifically for this industry. But the quality is such, and the price points are such, that it's good enough for healthcare, construction, and mold remediation and more critical environments, but it's priced that all industries will benefit from it. So our mission is essentially to develop products for critical environments. And at the end of the day, it's going to benefit everyone.
Well, speaking of the critical environments, your system will work with negative and positive pressure, correct?
Yes. And in the beginning, people didn't actually believe, like when we showed the magnetic entry strip, people assumed, and I think it's because of the old way of what they're used to, is they're probably buying magnetic doors, that those don't hold negative air pressure. But we proved over the last 2 years during the pandemic that these things will hold over 5 pascals of negative air pressure. Probably, I believe that's double what's required for isolation rooms in healthcare. And these were used for self-closing COVID isolation rooms in hundreds of hospitals and medical facilities, like senior living, dental,
a bunch of government facilities.
Yeah. So
Well,
we kind of went away from restoration for a bit, and went into really focusing on, and we got up in the morning to help, like, I don't know, we almost made it a personal mission to help with the fight against the pandemic. And because we knew we had the only product that can remove, not just hold negative air pressure, but works in open concept, because you can position this thing, anything on a barrier, and it works with any size barrier. So all the barrier constraints are eliminated. But it was great to be able to partner with the restoration companies that would listen, because we actually enabled them to get jobs, like lots of jobs, because they would just use their containment skills to build barriers of all kinds of shapes and sizes, and then just install our product. So it was kind of a big win-win.
Locked doors.
Yeah. And oh yeah, totally forgot about that. One problem that we're happy to have solved is when we put these on, and I'll show you the demo later, but we would solve the self-closing access through isolation rooms. And we were happy we were able to get the doctors and nurses away from using the zippers, but they had brought up, well, one problem we have is gurney access, with dragging the plastic over the gurneys and all that. And we told them, well, since we've eliminated the barrier constraints, you can actually use two of them, like side by side at variable widths, and you can accommodate, you can create the first ever magnetic flap door. So now we're doing flap doors and double flap doors, and our products open up all kinds of different containment techniques. And there's several. There's several, from even one feature. Oh, you got it.
They can go over the benefits and pros and cons.
Yeah, even the simplest thing like this, which is we added a grommet at the bottom of our zippers, so you can do lockout, tag out by overlaying here and putting a cable lock through here. And people were doing that in facilities where they were not fumigating, was it the gas treatments with the
sanitizing.
Yeah, sanitization. And they would put the zipper on, lock it out, and let it sit for an hour. And then with our system, you can actually peel off the zipper and put the magnet in its place. The zipper and magnetic strip are interchangeable.
On the same mounting strip that's already installed on the barrier.
Yep.
That's one of the things that I like about the system, especially for any kind of medical environment. You don't have to physically touch anything to gain access. You literally can walk, with your shoulder, it opens up, you walk through, you don't have to zip, unzip, and have that a touch point that becomes an issue with transmission of bacteria, mold, viruses, things like that. So as far as the different verticals that this could work in, you've named quite a few of them. It could go down as far as just a regular dust barrier too, not just, decon chambers and positive and negative pressure environments.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost countless every day. We're getting different industries buying from us, from grow rooms, so that would be like mushroom farms and cannabis facilities, to people doing HVAC thermal control inside of trailers and RVs and retail facilities and food facilities. So
Greenhouses and
yeah, outdoor greenhouses, which, you know, another technique that's a good point is that we helped someone doing an outdoor greenhouse where they put the magnetic strip on the inside of the barrier and then they put the zipper on the outside because there were severe wind gusts, but he still wanted to be able to go hands-free access. So he'd go in and out and then just use a zipper on the outside. So you can actually use them in combination, which is yet another technique. And so we feel like we're going to open up the type of techniques and empower the contractors, because I mean, we've seen some skilled contractors and see how proud they are with the containments. And if we can give them, I mean, it makes us happy if we can give them more tools to do what they do even better.
So I was surfing around your website earlier. I just want to see if there's anything new since the last time I was out there. And what comes to mind is it's 4 terms, but you've answered some of it. I just want you to expand on it a little bit more. The words I found were reusable, reliable seal, cost-effective, and versatile. I know you've talked about versatile already. Can you touch on some of the others? I'll give them to you again. We talked about reusable. So you're only replacing the bottom piece?
All right. So let me just do a quick breakdown of the entire zipper.
yeah, break down the
Okay.
zipper and points what we saw with the reusability.
Okay. So with traditional disposable dust barrier zippers, the complaints that we see all the time are the zippers jamming, breaking, and separating from the barrier. And, you know, people having to use additional adhesive to keep it on there. We've eliminated all three of those because with this, for break resistance, we have a 7-gauge zipper versus standard 5-gauge. So it's higher break resistance. There we go. The 2-layer system. So this is the peel and stick mounting strip. This will be added on. The two layers are too thick to get stuck in the zipper head. So they're essentially jam proof. And you don't need a special knife that cuts a gap or anything to create that jam resistance. You just use a regular utility knife down this cut guide, and it is the poly sheeting is not going to get stuck in there and stuck in the zipper head. So jam resistance. And then if you look at the back of this mounting strip, it's 100% high grade adhesive. You're not going to have to put on additional tape and, you know, to prevent the zipper from coming down. We've heard about people who literally sent their technicians out to check their zippers to make sure the barriers haven't, you know, failed or the zippers aren't coming down. The other great thing is replaceability. In the worst case scenario, the zipper breaks. Well, with other containments, you have to redo the entire containment. With ours, peel it off, just replace the zipper, and you're good to go. This zipper is probably the same, if not less, in cost than a disposable zipper anyway. And then the mounting strip is about 1/3 of the cost of a zipper. So continual use will actually help you continue to save money. I mean, people essentially make money off of our zippers if they're using it more than once. And if they use it only once, it's not like you're out of pocket, like extra or anything, because it's comparable in price to a heavy duty zipper.
All right. One last question before I ask you to show us a little bit about how these things work. I see you have a setup behind you. Pressure and strength. As far as how much pressure can they really handle? Has it been measured? You have documentation on that?
We would say we had it field tested. We don't have it documented, but it's essentially been used in the field, measuring over 5 pascals. We hit 7. Some people got it to hold like 11 pascals.
I believe at one of the trade shows, just to test the disposable zipper strength and versus our reusable. I think we did hit over 30 pascals, and some of the other disposable zippers started separating from the poly, and ours didn't.
Yeah, that's ripping down the containment before our zipper's even coming off.
Okay.
With the Velcro, it's I can't say Velcro, it's hook and loop. There's a little bit of give that you don't, and adjustability that you get that you won't get with the disposables.
Okay. Well, I see you mentioned it before. You have a setup behind you. Could you give us a demo on how this works?
Yeah. So, that's 9
Just remember, we may not be able to hear what you're saying if you're far away. That's all.
We're going to be moving the camera. All right. So, in the interest of time, we already put up the mounting strip. So the peel and stick mounting strip goes on just like a disposable dust barrier zipper. You'll add it. You'll peel and stick this on, and what you'll do is just add the zipper and put it down. You'll open it up, and then you'll just cut down the cut guide, and then you got your zipper on. Alternatively, you can cut first, add one side at a time. And once you've got it on, you also got this feature, which that's where you can either put a cable lock through the front or pierce through here and do it all the way through. And then you've got the lockout tag out with the zipper. So here's, I'll show you how we can interchange between zipper and magnetic strip. So we'll just roll up the zipper, and it has these fastener tabs right here, fastener tabs that'll hold it in place neatly. And then we got this carry bag that'll go into. I'll show you that a little later. But here's how you switch from zipper to magnetic strip. So this is the magnetic strip. Same thing, has a hook on the back, magnetic columns. And the trick here is you'll put on the mounting strip, cut it first. This way you'll prevent from cutting the magnets. So you'll put that and cut it first. You'll fold this in half. So the magnetic columns are stacked. And then you simply by one side. Come down. Yeah. So yeah, and then this is right off. Easily fold back up.
How much training do you need to get that right?
Not very difficult. If someone's already using a dust barrier zipper, it's pretty simple.
Very good. I mean, it does look simple. And when we've used it in class, I've never done a switch like that. I mean, we usually put one up or the other, but it's just as easy, I guess, to switch, which you just demonstrated.
Yeah. So one of the first medical facilities that used our product was Orlando Regional Medical Center. And there, I believe there's a board of people that were discussing our product, looking for a solution because they couldn't hold maintain levels of the proper level of air exchange in the isolation rooms because the nurses and doctors were leaving the zippers open. They had initially they had access to our zippers, so they put those up and they wanted the magnets. They're like, okay, we'll give it a shot. They went ahead and put on the zippers because that's what they had because they needed to get something up immediately. And he said, go ahead, do that because you're going to be able to switch out to our magnets. And then they did, and it ended up solving their air exchange issue. Obviously, because the nurses and doctors are not leaving it open. but then we also proved that it can actually hold the levels of air pressure required. Then after that, more and more hospitals started kind of catching on and doing it. So we've been trying to get the word out there, but right now it's a lot of individual locations. But we had like Patterson Air Force Base, HCA, Dignity Health, Kaiser, like some of the big names, and recently Canadian Special Forces ordered for their medical facilities. So, you know, it's out there. We've proven it all over the place, and you know, this is going to help us hopefully get the word out more to industries you guys work with too.
Well, we're definitely going to have this out there for our members and our followers, so they will see that. So, without putting you on too much of a spot, which I don't mind doing, is there anything new coming that you can talk about? I don't want any trade secrets here, but anything new that you can let us know what's coming. If you say no, that's okay too.
Let me maybe hint at it. Only because we're trying to be a little careful.
Enough said. Enough said. We can go with that.
Yeah.
So where can somebody buy this stuff?
You know what? Better to cut me off. Yes, there are going to be things, and I'll just say there are going to be things coming out that are going to they're going to add even more containment techniques, and it's like we're excited about it. It's coming soon, but
Yeah, you'll see it real soon.
Yeah.
Okay. So where can somebody purchase this stuff? Is it in the big box stores, to distributors, from you guys? You know, where do people go to get the reusable systems?
So we sell it directly online and on Amazon, but we also just recently, actually as of yesterday, just launched with Wesco Hazmasters Connie Safety. So that's in Hazmasters in Canada, Connie Safety's in the US. There are several locations of Aramco that have started carrying it. So we believe it will start going more system-wide. And we have several big distributors testing this out right now. And so hopefully it's going to be everywhere soon. No big box yet, but we have companies like HD Supply and people like that reaching out to us to test it. So,
and we're in some locations in UK and Australia, and we're starting to spread. So
But that's good to hear, because we've also recently been doing stuff in Australia, the UK, South Africa. So we're definitely having an impact in a lot of different locations too. And for us, it makes it easier when we refer to a system or a product or at least a type of technology, people are familiar with it, especially when we're going outside the US. So that makes a big difference. So that's a good thing. All right. How about contact info for you? What's your website for people to go to?
www.reuzip.com. You can contact us at email at info@reuzip.com.
All right. Any last question here? Any upcoming trade shows we can find yet?
I think next one we'll be at ServPro's trade show, their big one in Tampa Bay in June.
That's their national conference. That might be more exclusive to them, but yeah, nothing on the schedule just yet. We've been focusing a lot this year on the new products that we got coming out, but we'll be back in the circuit again probably next year.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you spending the time with us. I know it's a big time difference. I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast, but I do appreciate you being here, and we'll do this again when you can tell us about some of the other super secret stuff that's coming out.
No, we'd love that.
We appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lance.
When you start on the pathway toward professional success, you have to know what the goal is and how to get there. Normie exists to help in that process. It's not just about taking a class to get a license, but also about starting on a pathway to professional success. Whether you want to work for yourself or be the best qualified employee on the team, this path will take you there and help you succeed. Pick a track, click on the class, and get your journey started. Normie is here to support you all the way to become the Normie Pro professional you want to be.
Good afternoon, everyone. Want to welcome you all to Normie CE training. This is where you get your Normie recertification credits for yearly recertification. Want to welcome you all. Want to welcome all of our admin people starting to pop into the room here. I see a bunch of them coming in tonight. This is good. Glad to see that. And I want to welcome everybody on all the other platforms that are here tonight. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Restream, DLive, Twitter. We're all over the place. So for all of you watching on those other platforms, welcome, and I'm glad to see you here. Just as a reminder, at the end of our session, we will be turning off the live feed to all the social media platforms for any of you Normie members that want to continue on with the special announcements that we will have. You will have to be in our Zoom room, which is impact.normie.org. And you have to be an active member to get in there. So just a heads up, you don't want to miss out on anything. So I see we got everybody in the room here. I know, Doug, you're out and about. So I want to send this over to you real quick, because I know you had a few announcements you want to make while the internet's holding out for you. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, thank you. I'm actually in Pecan Grove RV camp here in Lake Village, Arkansas, right on Highway 65, headed back to Louisiana after our trip to Texas last week, which was really, really cool. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the exciting things we did out there. We did 2 case studies, one on Thursday, one on Friday. We were in Dallas on Thursday, Fort Worth on Friday, and doing some case studies on mycotoxin testing. So really excited about that. But I'm really excited to tell you that we're looking forward to our first Texas class, certified mold remediation contractor class. It's the initial training. That's a 5-day class, so it's 40 hours. But I was able to arrange the venue at Pure Clean in Frisco, Texas. You'll be seeing that on the website probably within the next day or so. But that's a 5-day class. But here's the exciting thing about this particular class. Well, let me tell you the dates first. It's August 28th through September 1st. And the reason we're telling you this right now is because there are only 12 seats available. It's a very small classroom. They've got a large warehouse area where we're going to be doing our hands-on training, but it's a relatively small classroom. We don't want it crowded. And so there are only 12 people that we're going to be able to train in this particular class. If we sell it out, which I think is probably highly likely, then we'll go ahead and set up another class probably within a couple of weeks after that particular class. But that class, the exciting thing about that class is, as you know, Texas has one of the most strict requirements for licensure, 40 hours compared to the other training that's 4 days